Alright, so we're up here at the rotor head. We have push-pull tube number 1 with your rod end, torque stripe, the jam nut, powell nut, lower scissors arm. Got the rod end, make sure there's no looseness in that. Push-pull tube number 2 also with a rod end. Check for twisting but no lateral or vertical movement. Push-pull tube number 3. Check the rod end for lateral, vertical movement, but also with the twist. So here we have this lower portion is the stationary swash plate. I'm going to twist the blades to show you. So the lower one's the stationary because it stays in the same spot. Then there's a bearing. There's a bearing that allows the rotating swash plate just to simply ride along. So rotating swash plate, here's my stationary swash plate. These are pitch links. Now there's no safety wires in these yet because we're still doing track and balance. Make sure the torque stripes are on there. They're not on there right now because we're making adjustments. Here's your cord arm weight. Make sure that's on there tight, if there is any, depending on your track and balance. Here's your blade root. Make sure all those torque stripes are nice and tight. And on each blade there's this rubber boot at the bottom. Now this boot contains red, basically looks like automatic transmission fluid. If it's leaking, it's going to be leaking off the bottom. You're going to be checking for twists in the rubber. Make sure that's not slipping. Also, here is 3 main rotor bolts, head bolts. 1 for the teeter bearing, and then the other 2 for each blade itself. Now, there should be a cotter pin in this, but we're going to be drilling the bolts here, I think, today. Once we make sure everything's nicely tuned. Alright, coming up, this is essentially a dust boot. Make sure a good zip tie's on there, nice and tight. Make sure there's no dry rot. Make sure there's no cracking, no holes. What you can do here, you can spin the blade or walk around, your choice. You can inspect the whole blade. This is another scissor arm that stabilizes the rotating swash plate to the main rotor mast. So you have lower scissors, it goes from the mast to the stationary swash plate, and then from the rotating swash plate up to the mast again. So it just makes things nice and stable. There's going to be a powell nut on this guy. That's for your droop stops. Make sure that's on there nice and tight. We'll get another shot of another head and make sure we know what we're looking at here. Here's your main rotor, one of your main rotor pitch links right here. Check to make sure it has safety wire coming on up. Got a good torque stripe. Check your rod end. And these bolts will have the cotter pins in place, but they're not in yet. Here's your clamp for your main rotor boot. On that, make sure that has a nice torque stripe on there as well. Torque stripes are key. It's an easy indication if something's gone wrong or twisted. Coming on down. Also more torque stripes. Gotta love torque stripes. Although battered looking, this is your Pitot tube. I think it had some issues before. It was like that when we got it. But make sure it's not blocked up, no bugs inside, because that's going to affect your airspeed indicator. We're going to check the condition of this blade, this main rotor blade on the R22. So you're going to start at the very root of the blade, and just come all the way down. I've already done it, but you just walk down the blade, check for any debonding, any dents, dings, nicks, anything that doesn't look good. This is where your span weights are and your blade tip weight is, so make sure those screws are properly installed. Notice our tracking tape is still on there. Robinson has had issues in the last 24 inches of these blades for debonding. So just a little on the yellow side of the blade is where the bond line is of the D-bar with the honeycomb, and just make sure that there's no debonding. Now, one thing, to my understanding, Robinson has not had any debonding, delamination problems as long as the paint on the leading edge has not gone over the bond line. So as you can tell, there's really no paint worn off this blade, so it should not be a problem. So let's inspect the top of the blade. Check on the top. We'll do this on both sides, but I'm just only going to show you one. walking on down. You check the top because you never know if you had hail damage. If you never check the top of the blade, then you could be flying around with debonding issues on the top. Alright, I moved the aircraft back in, but just to make sure that we covered everything, we'd go back to the POH and make sure we've gotten everything before you go up and fly. Check the fuel. Everything's good. Preflight complete.